So let's talk. This is the second run. The first run was a peacekeeper focused one. It's the first one was more like me, what I would have chosen, and this one was more as an experiment to see if something changed. And when a game promises that your choices will have impact, that you need to make the right choices, it's I always want to see the result of my choices in the ending. And here I only saw one. Harkon wasn't there. Harkon wasn't there to ambush me. Every other character would have the same dialogue and the same reactions. Also, yeah, the only thing that changed in the very end is that Lawan was injured. And that is, for me, a completely failure of that promise. Seeing it from a slightly different perspective, that these choices will impact the world around you, or more the travel that you do, that's more accurate. That the zones will make the NPCs react more positive, negative towards you. That's completely true. But I have not noticed any, let's say, fluctuation for maybe pricing in weapons or other supplies, that they become more expensive or cheaper depending on what faction likes you. I have not noticed any actual change besides the patrolling troops that will try to guard the city street. And that is hugely disappointing. Not even the main cast of characters is hugely impacted by the choices I have done. They might not agree, but as is a thought I had at the very start here, the reason why Matt is still helping me, even though I gave every little bit of control into the survivor's hand, is because we still had a common goal. So there is, like, you can feel betrayed, but in the end we are all still in the same boat. So he is still pulling with us instead of against us. And that is why I really like to help the peacekeepers, because they were really supportive of you and your actions and gave you direct feedback. On the survivor side of things, it was more of a mixed bag, where often I would help people that I morally do not align with, like the mafia people. There was this one guy that even tried to get me into an ambush. Yeah, at the very start when I'm supposed to help the bazaar. I cannot stress this enough, that he straight up wants me dead to someone, and he yeah, it does not seem to affect the rest of the village. They don't even notice that he and the gang is gone. Also, yeah, the brother of that one lady, Sophie, um, still don't like him. His character hasn't changed. It doesn't change it. He has nothing done to justify that he just manipulated a 16-17-year-old to a very young adult to just follow him and sacrifice himself for him, and then he did not even honor his death. Like, fuck that guy. I still don't think the survivors in the city, like, if you think they deserve something or control, it's just, it makes no sense. Especially what LeBron says at one point, like, nobody is staying with them, so why do not? So I'm staying with them because someone has to. Like no, sure, people feel oppressed, but they are oppressed for a certain reason, to get in line and help each other. Yeah, like for example, that is the thought process of that soup kitchen. Like everyone needs to help to make that soup kitchen running. Yeah, else the poor cannot be helped. And I can only see the survivors getting the train going through really wild means. That the people that will drink out the last penny from you will get you in some sort of debt to get you to donate to that soup kitchen, instead of it being embedded in a rule set that will live on after the guy that made the rule set passed away. Man, a different thing that really came to my attention when I played this is the combat system. It's not so much with the Zombatons, but the human factions, that just by backing up, or even if you are surrounded by a lot of human enemies, only one will attack you. I don't know which Assassin's Creed it was or so, but I remember it as a negative feature that, for one, Assassin's Creed is, or at least I never played one, but I perceived it as like you are this master assassin that wants to change history, and then I see this master assassin being open in the street fighting groups of 5 to 10 people. First of all, that doesn't make sense, but yeah, that's my main beef with that game series. But then there was a reviewer that highlighted that every fight was still a 1v1, no matter how many opponents were in front of you. The AI commander, let's name it that, would only send one guy at a time at you. Sure, ranged troops in this game would do firing support, but towards the end you could see how rapidly I could fire the bow, while ranged projectiles, molotovs or arrows or bolts were always, let's say they would fly every 5 seconds, so you could time it. There was a rhythm interval where you could easily dodge those things, which I didn't do since I play on normal and just manhandle through, eh? And that is really disappointing, that if you fight more than one guy, that if you're daring to fight a greater group, there's no greater threat than fighting just one guy, which is really sad. Last point, and we see the right names for it, because I'm extremely disappointed by the music. The music in of itself is not totally garbage or trash. It's but it's not A class, and this is a AAA cost type of game, $60. And this music is not rememberable. that is what I think the previous game did way better. The entire atmosphere is way better in Dying Light 1. And here I think I talked about it, but so I only want to hammer it down onto the music that there's no supporting factor there at any point in time. The only time the music plays or starts to pick up is when you start moving, when you are faster than just running. And I find that disappointing, since post-apocalyptic or zombie games are always about the atmosphere of feeling alone. That that you are alone, not that something is wrong. Zombie games are a bit about some, and that it feels wrong, but zombies have evolved into the slasher genre, where they are just meat to pass time by. And very few games today will recreate fear of zombies, which you can really see here, like the giant mob with the hammer hand. Like, I have no fear of him. He is just a giant monstrosity that wants to bash my head in. It's nothing more, and his downside is, his plus side is he's extremely strong and tanky, downside he's extremely slow and predictable. So you just run away from him. If I do what I do, which is just slash him because you can get 5 hits in before he even starts the next animation. Yeah, music is really underwhelming in this game. It really feels like a lot of the tracks I have already heard or heard too much, since they are too standard. Or they are themes to support that get played into a masterpiece, not that they are a good track in of itself. Especially this one track that plays when you are climbing, it has this string that really gets distorted and stuff. Bruh, that is annoying as fuck. That is annoying. That's why I had to, like, that's why in the first playthrough I completely stopped listening to the music. I disabled it. But then for the second one, I thought to myself, I just have to have it on. Like, I have to give it a chance. And I cannot just listen to 5 notes and straight discard it. So I gave it a chance. I had it on the entire time, and then had my own music playing as well. So then even when no music is playing, I would have something. Bro, music is so important to a game. Music sets the mood. Different example, in movie making, seeing a scene or a picture, the music to it can make you feel completely different, a completely different spectrum of emotions. So why is there not more music in this game? Or why is the focus? It really feels lacking in the music department. I cannot stress this enough. So, as for the biggest impact of the game, adjacent zones to a certain faction. And I thought that the Peacekeeper things were not interesting to rather working against it. Like, for example, the first perk, you get car bombs. Car bombs are cute, they are fun, big explosions, and so on. But every time something explodes, a horde of small, slow Zeds and volatiles and runners spawns. So every time you use a car bomb to get rid of some infected, you spawn basically as much or only half of it, or about half of them. So the only thing the car bomb does is reduce the horde by half at maximum, which is weird. Why would I ever do a car bomb then? Just sure, yeah, I would just throw a Molotov and then slice them while they're in the burning animation. Yeah, the only attraction is for a car bomb that it doesn't cost you anything. But then again, a lot of car bombs are in an area where there's only a low population of zombies, of infected. So there's no real reason to ever use them. Like, why would I spawn 8 Zits when for blowing up 3? Makes no sense. Same with the Guardian turret, or this turret that has the description. This tool is used to get rid of infected in a large area, and I have only seen one. I probably didn't have my eyes open enough for them, but if they were positioned for to maybe clear out the extraction convoys and military convoys, that would have been nice. That would have been really freaking nice, because it would also support the player in that not only are the zombies away, but you get the convoy as reward for using that weapon. Or in the reverse, the weapon actually helps you get more resources. It's basically like the same principle of the night quests, like the stores and shops, that you should only explore at night, because in daytime they are stocked up with infected. So they have the objective as well, that you go in there and then you find a large portion of a resource of a certain kind. And you could argue, yeah, maybe it's because of the respawn time. But that is already in the game a counter or timer, where even if you have to lockpick a container, it will appear empty if you loot it too often. I have run into that, because it wasn't a bug, that was just me going to bed 2 times in a row, basically skipping half a day, then going to the same loot spawner. So of course it was empty. Then a thing I also should highlight again, this game feels old on day one. And it is especially visible to me since I played the first Dying Light right before this, and I can not really see changes or something that looks better in Dying Light 2. I even think that most of the graphics in the first Dying Light look way better than here. For example, the placeholder objects to for a lot of the things that render in the distance. I think they were so detailed that even at the beginning of Dying Light, a lot of people couldn't play it because the frame rate was ass, and the reason for that was the that you had a slider for reducing render distance. And you, as a gamer, wouldn't really see the impact of reducing that thing. Um, but it would, yeah, that was just the render distance. Um, and once it was slided down, everything was running just fine. And here, uh, like, if you have a city and you traverse through it, you can not just stand still and enjoy the scenery. That is that is something major. And yeah, there are nice shots here and there, especially when you have sun rays going through the housings. But the foliage on distance looks so trash, so trash, and unattractive. There's one tech in this game which I haven't experienced as such, which I'm really happy that they put it in. A moment, which is a upscale mode, and this one really felt extremely nice because it's, as for I have received it in game, the object would, let's say car, the car wouldn't be smaller resolution, but the textures on that car would be shittier resolution. So the edges of the car would still be smooth and wouldn't need additional anti-aliasing or something. It would look sharp, and then the coloring and the actual texture of that car would look trash, of course. Um, and the effect that had is the longer you are in an area, the more sharper the area becomes, and the better the graphics of that area would become, which is really freaking dope. Because often when I have to upscale games, I would play in a 720 resolution and stretch it up to 1080, and that would make everything seem muddy. Uh, and here, everything still had a resemblance of sharpness, while the texture on the object wasn't as nicely looking, but but it had, like I said, the effect that if I'm longer in an area, like for example on the ship or in any of the camps, I would have to wait only like 5 to 10 seconds, and everything would look attractive, which is really freaking surprising. I want to see this kind of feature more. And yeah, I want to highlight here, in case you're wondering. Um, in my first playthrough, I would have everything on max, and I would not have this on, so I still have the metadata to compare. Um, yeah. And then some patches came, and for some reason the performance would go up or down. Suddenly my CPU would get stressed more or less. But this significantly reduced stress on my GPU, which is really nice. I'm struggling a bit to find an ending here, and I think I should just go over the main plotline. Um, where I should I think I should just give my most memorable moment or tell the story as I can remember it now, because that should tell you how much I like certain points or dislike or completely just want to forget certain things. Um, yeah, because on the contrary, this is also really freaking fresh. So if something is missing, there needs to be a reason for why it's probably missing. That I forget it, and I pride myself on memory. So I start with the guy. Come on, Spark. He makes the tutorial, which I really like. I think this is one of the better tutorials out there. Very structured. Um, it feels hand-holdy, but only because I don't get the I I don't get to just run through, which is good and bad because people that have played the game before don't get to just skip the tutorial, even though it would probably be better for to skip the tutorial since it's not the actual game. But even playing the tutorial a second time, it didn't feel that handholdy. Only the section that, where you learn to craft the medkit is a bit limited. That you cannot, like, you have to fetch the resources, and if you don't do it, you're bound to that place. That's basically what I'm saying. It's not a biggie. You just collect it. Yeah, and you come to that house and have a little bit of story time with Spark, and then you split up. You go to Villador while he goes somewhere else. Also, that radio station, um, I kind of wanted to have more impact, but it doesn't really need more impact. It's fine in what it does. Um, but if you could listen to a conversation to an NPC and maybe recall information for that dialogue with that NPC, that would have been nice. And if that happened, I probably didn't pay attention to it. Um, then you're in the underground. Then you make your way towards Villador over the giant lake, and that scientist is helping you getting in. And yeah, then he dies to Waltz, but he gives the key to you beforehand. So you flee from Waltz and get suddenly ambushed. Oh, wait, was he ambushed by the volatile before or after? Not sure. Um, Anyways, you make your way to the bazaar where Harkon takes. Where first they want to hang you, which is a bit extreme. A good old hit to the head would have done the same job, but hanging him actually gives Harkon the time to arrive to establish himself and save you from that position, which is just weird. Weird. But I don't want to ramble again about why I don't like the Survivor Camp. Um, so when, uh, when we regain consciousness after Harkon injected us with something, his two girls are scared for a good reason. Um, and then we learn a little bit about the world with him. We meet Chilean, who we only hear referenced later on a little bit, but actually has no impact in the world. I say that because of the end we just saw where he helps us out for no reason in my eyes. And from there on out, we uh, right before we meet Chilean, it is night and we try to get into the bazaar, but of course I still don't have that biomarker. So we go to the Killian, hope he has one. He doesn't have one, so we make our way to the hospital, get a biomarker from there, but make it out in a really cool fashion where normally you would see a cutscene running away from the beast, but in this case, you are interacting with that cutscene. You are running, you are escaping, and it also teaches you that often you do not need to fight a large horde or sneak by a large horde. You can just run through it, but sneaking gives you the opportunity to get resources undamaged and yeah, proceed to sectors without getting attention to you. So that is really noisily established. When we get the biomarker, uh, so we make it to the bazaar this time with the biomarker. We get to I'm so unsure at this point because there's something that happens before we talk to Sophie. Right, the quest with the mechanic, where we zap that goat and get our first free weapons mod. Um, and that feels a bit off, since it feels like it should happen a bit later. Also, the quest just states talk to the people in the bazaar, so we also end up helping out this water guy. Um, where I feel it time wasted if I recap everything, but in the end he has tainted water that is poisoned. We help him out resolving it. The end result of solving it doesn't impact the story at all. We don't know if people suddenly frown on him or not. Um, we just move on, just like with zapping that goat. Even so, goats or wildlife in general is extremely scarce, and killing that goat is whatever. Then we continue. I don't know if Hakan points us to Sophie, but we end up with her, and she says we are nobody. We need to be somebody to talk to her. So help out the folks. That would be a good starting point. Um, so yeah, we get presented with three options of helping that mafia dude. I wanna say it's Decker or Dexter. I completely forgot his name. He has a fetch quest where we have to hunt someone down, I think. Um, and later on we can help this dude out also, that we have to hunt down since he is a handyman that just gets his hands on things, but he's late on a delivery and he is basically late on everyone's delivery. And yeah, and we can help him get his stuff for that quest. We can help him later to get some stuff for something else. but we learn that he injured himself on the second quest and is out of the game for a week and cannot do any runs for anyone, which is yeah, feels bad, man. Also, he still had debt and got a bruising or two from the bartender. No, not from the bartender, from someone else that was also on that quest. Um, so he doesn't fuck up again or more later on, which not really makes too much sense since he already had a leg injury. So bruising him up more would only postpone the healing of that leg. So that guy is basically dead. Um, then we help out the mechanic again on a quest I don't remember. We can talk to a few people about why they hung us, and depending on we talking to them, their NPC, a standard dialogue will change between a positive and a negative one. Else talking to them doesn't really impact anything. They don't even contribute to Sophie's quest. Also, doing the last one is, like I said, we get talk to someone. Um, we need someone for a job, but it's uncertain. It's definitely shady. You have no idea what he is talking about. What we seem to do. We are just supposed to meet someone, and that will give us the quest then later. And it's an ambush. We we are supposed to get sacrificed for something. In this case, it's probably for the death, that it's assassination attempt on the successful assassination attempt on that one higher up of the peacekeepers, but it looks more shady, and they have killed newcomers more often than just this one. It's not just this one time. Um, yeah. So by killing them all, because I don't see any reason why I should let them live. Um, yeah, by getting rid of those dudes, we get to talk to Sophie. But in that time frame, we get to talk to the peacekeepers as well, especially Ator, which is the leading commander of the team that is currently holding that one train station, and we get to learn that a commander is the guy that held his position before him got killed. And nobody knows who. Everyone thinks the killer is in the bazaar, and we only have the Lazarus, his knuckle dusters with bikes, as a hint that possibly the guy who killed him took the commander's weapon and probably still has it, or sold it to someone who could tell us who sold it to him. But we find out that a child found the Lazarus in a back alley, and nobody knows how it landed there. So that is an empty lead, and we uh, we only talked about it with one person, which is Harkon. And I just thought about how I implement that back in line, but yeah, that's not gonna be clean, so I just threw it in there now. So he is. Uh, since Harkon is the killer, it makes sense that once we talk to him about the Lazarus and stuff, that he suddenly threw it away instead of keeping it. Also, why he kept the tattoo is a bit weird. But it kinda sorta makes sense that the tattoo used as a framing device uh, makes some sense. But why take the Lazarus? That makes less of sense. Um, Especially since blood tests are probably no longer possible. Yeah, the world has been uh, submerged and infected for over a century. Most medical electrical equipment doesn't work anymore, and replacements are hard to come by. So, you get to talk to Sophie. I have completely forgotten um, I have the images in my head, but I don't know how the story evolves. But um, her story starts with the trade-off with Jack and Joe on the water tower to get more water, and it goes south. And the rest of her storyline, since I don't want to talk too much here, um, evolves that about the structure problems inside of the bazaar, the leadership, and how they do things in general. So she, in the long run, will become the leader of the bazaar one way or the other. Even in the PK's run, the current leader loses a lot of credibility in that quest line, so that Sophie basically ends up as the leader or the shadow leader of the bazaar, um, and he basically becomes powerless, um, or just a puppet. But we meet Jack and Joe, and I wish we had more of them because they are the introduction to giving a sector to a faction. Since we free a water tower, and suddenly we get the choice of giving the uh, the purified water to either the PKs or the survivors. But even so, this is a major choice story in this story. It doesn't really reflect. Um, the main avatars, the main people, will be a little bit upset that you gave the other factions the water, but in the grand scheme of things, stop will continue. The survivors will lead an attack onto the peacekeepers because the peacekeepers don't calm down, and there will be war. On the peacekeeper side of things, we will not figure out how the windmill got nuked and the station got taken. But on the survivor side, we actually get to play the guy that goes in and bombs that place and unleashes a horde of infected into the PK's territory, or disables the safe zone that they have, so they have to retreat. And that is one of the most brutal ways of taking that. or how this game would flag it, it would be extremely inhuman. Like, you can say, yeah, we they could just go away, but the reality is they will still try. While the electricity is out, they will stand their ground and try to figure out if a cable is broken. Not that the windmill is blown up, even so they heard the explosion. Also, backup generators are a thing. Also, not everyone will be able to fit through the tunnel all at once, so they have to retreat in waves. So the deaths of the PKs that defended the civilians, the smiths, the traders, uh, in that outpost, yeah, died inhumanly. But here is where I really had bash with this story, because you still get to go to inner Villador, and nothing really seems to have been impacted. Nothing seems to have been impacted. You you hear something along the lines of, yeah, the survivors did this and that, and if you were on survivor's side, you get to um, get to have an earful that you probably helped them, but there are no reliable information sources that you did anything, so nobody is doing anything, or could even start thinking that you uh, did something. But I just yeah, keep on playing at that point, keep on trucking, meeting new NPCs and stuff, meeting Levon. And I intentionally skipped over the tunnel because I really wanted to connect those 2 points. But before you go to Inner Villador, you get to meet Aitor again. And if you found the Lazarus and gave it to him, he will be friendly. If you gave the water tower to him, he will be extremely friendly and forthcoming. You will even go into the tunnel together with him. If you give the water tower to the survivors, he will be there with the intent to hunt you down. But Aeta is a man of honor, so he will not strike you down. He will imprison you and will try to get you to a trial. So, anyways, the talk inside of the tunnel suddenly gives enough time for the power to fail, get you closed in, and 4 walls to appear. And Waltz just annihilates you and the squad. He fucking knocks you all out, also giving way to the first introduction of your mutated form, which makes you extremely resistant to damage and raises your damage to insane with unlimited stamina. So, yeah, so you escape that tunnel and get a second encounter on a so-called car factory. That sector is extremely slim and is basically just a parkour to meet Waltz again with a small fight, where then we have the exposition that you are one of his experiments, which we already knew before, but he realized that you are not only just an experiment, but you are a special one for him. We don't really know why. We get the feeling of that we are extra resistant compared to other experimentees, and and get let go of him. Then Levon also shoots him with an arrow, which makes him go insane zombie mode, and we need to run from him. We escape after a long sequence, and finally, and have Levon as our introductory guide to Old Villador slash Inner Villador. And she also teaches us to use the glider, which I still hate in its initial form, where you have as good as no control. And the upgrades you get for the glider, where you wobble and stuff, are things your character does, not the glider actually does, which I find really irritating. As where to the normal skill tree, it makes sense that you learn moves, that you learn to block and stuff. It's a bit ridiculous that you learn to block arrows, but whatever. Um, but that you actively need to upgrade the glider, that you have to pay gold and those special resources, those military techs, to upgrade a glider, then to have learned to wobble on it, to lose less height. Yeah, that's a bit ridiculous. But then again, this is a video game. So, um, plus the tech is not that far away, especially if you follow the main storyline. So it's okayish. But when I first played it, it was blatantly ugly. It took way too long to get to that level 2 glider. But yeah, you Levon gets you to the fisheye where you meet Frank, a drunk hero basically, man who once was something, but now is haunted by the ghost of the past. And you get to meet Jack Matt later on, and this story in between meeting Frank to that attack on the fisheye is, bruh, there's nothing there. So yeah, then there's an attack on the fisheye. You defend the fisheye and meet. You get a call to help Frank since Frank is getting swamped by renegades. You defend Frank, and Jack Matt makes an appearance. Nice pork. And the thingy-magic. What's it called? Yeah, Jack Matt is the commander of the PKs, or the highest up of the PKs, which I didn't get at a certain time. And he is, he's reliable. The one says that he is only self-sufficient, he only is concerned about himself and progressing himself, but that also makes him reliable in if we become a valuable asset, he will always be there to get us out of a sticky situation. Since he doesn't want to lose his precious tool. So, yeah. We learn that things are not that easy, not that blue and yellow. But in the PK's camp, there's also someone who has his own has his own vision for the future, Juan, which is supposed to get some ultraviolet lamps to Jack Matt, but is late for his delivery, and we get to know that asshole. But he is, depending on how you talk to him, he will he will offer you anyways to join his cause of being not just a middleman, but to get a little bit more power. And yeah, that's still a storyline I need to explore to. Yeah, because first I completely ignored him. Second, I gave him an ear, told him that I could help him out to later bug the radio towers to send information to him instead of Jack. Um, yeah, but that is something I just skipped. We learn that one objective Jack has is he wants to retake the Villador News Center, or at least get some men on the very top of it to reactivate the radio station up there. With the help of the radio waves, he should be able to reach everyone and rally his troops in real time, and also hopefully make the renegades retreat from the zone, since they suddenly have this uh, proactive situation with this proactive behavior where they don't just stay in their own zone, but suddenly they swarm the blue zones. Um, but yeah, we get to learn about Ro. How do we learn about him again? Before we talk about Ro, we also learn that Aether actually isn't dead. He gets rescued not by us, but by a team. And what I find weird about that scene is that it's as if Aether and I never met. They got him from the tunnel. Nobody knows that I was there, and I don't insert myself in a position to let them know that I was there, what happened, and stuff. Um, we get a side quest to help him or to kill him, and that also gives way to maybe herbal medicine for the entire boat for the future instead of just relying on the leftovers of the old world. Um, yeah, so even so, I wanted to kill him on my second playthrough, I just couldn't because it just made no sense. How do we meet Ro? Oh, right. Ro and his men got ambushed. So they had to split up over multiple locations. We get orders for him. Um, but only meet his stand-in. Then give his stand-in the orders, and the system also gives us information where Ro actually is. So we go after his squad, meet splintered soldiers from his squad to pinpoint his location and get him out. Um, He's not very nice to us, but that is understandable because a job had to be done. In this case, this he had to rally his group and retreat to Jackman, just as ordered. And then maybe we would have some nice time. Then the second memory I have of him is when we have the party with LeOne and her crew. Where we always make him sing, of course. And yeah, and the character is growing on us. I don't think that you can really dislike Ro. Up until this point, LeOne is a weird character. She is headstrong, as described by Harkon, and she is really she's something. Someone who just doesn't like to be seen, I guess, unless it's a very certain situation. But she's proactive. I almost said she is positive in her lifestyle. But I rather want to say that she doesn't let things drag her down for all the good and bad stuff that contains. Then, yeah. We learn more about her. She becomes our friend. At least we get the perception of that. And we become her friend. Um, the story progresses of her actually becoming a potential love interest, but doesn't allow the story to unfold that way since LeOne is uh, focused on her kill list. That is a task she has given herself to do before she does anything else. Yeah, if she wants to build her life, this kill list, everyone on the list needs to be dead first. So she just interacts with everyone normally and doesn't show that she's a revenge spirit, but also blocks any advances on her that way, or possible relationship that could build. Well, that's not entirely true since that one dude in the fish eye and Frank and Ro are her friends, so she is not completely antisocial, and is actually a really upbeat person. But she has that list. She is going after those people, and there's nothing that will stop her from it. That basically is her entire character. She's naive and straightforward. Um, yeah. Then everything gets in line. You you get those lamps. You rescued Ro, and everyone is ready and fit for taking that VNC tower. So you group up and you take it, but not for free. Ro goes in with you and his squad. Matt is strictly against Ro taking part in this mission since he needs him as a trainer for future troops. And Ro says, no, I'm gonna go anyways. Yeah, if that is the last mission for my men, I wanna be there with them. Understandably. Also having his experience at the front line risen the chances of success drastically. but we get ambushed by bloaters or bombermans, things that explode in your face if you come too close to them. And we lose the entire squad. Row gives us inspirational speeches and songs along the way, so we don't get a lame ending for him. We get quite the hero ending for him, which is cool. Since normally military characters uh, are grinded down to be heartless, strong-minded, no value for life people, but Ro is shown to have a lot of heart and caring for his people. So we get to experience it and the death of that man that did a lot for his squad. Um, yeah. Once Ro is dead and we have secured the dog tags of his squad mates, we mutate again. We have this endless swarm of infected, or was it why the bloaters attacked? I don't remember accurately. But yeah, we have a second infected moment where we go super mode and bash a shitload of infected. And then we ask Le1 for help because we don't see a way further up. Le1 gets Frank involved. Frank doesn't want to, but gives us the hint, or was it Ro that gives us the hint that we have. No, it must have been Frank. That there's still something in the elevator that the Night Runners left behind that died in the VNC tower all those weeks ago. And we get a grappling hook, or we get a rope launcher. And we can start swinging at things. This tool will help us climb the entire tower. The rest of the tower is quite a nice tutorial for it. The tower also is a highlight of how well Dying Light 1 and 2 do vertigo, or afraidness of heights, or just generally, in a game, it's really hard to make a feeling that you're actually 3-4 levels above the ground. But this game has really nice effects to make you feel that you are those 50 levels above the ground. If you fuck up, you fucked up majorly. You still have the glider to go down, but you would have to climb the entire tower again, which you probably do not want to do, especially since that elevator is broken down. So yeah. So you get to the top. Le1 started following you since you got that grappling hook, and you make it to the tower top, and you get 3 options. Frank suddenly gets a blast from the past, a ray of hope to maybe start a own radio station. So you get the choice between giving the PKs the radio tower or the survivors. And if you decided to help Juan, you will have a spiked PK's radio where Juan's story would continue. That is the piece of the story I still have to explore, how that would unfold. So maybe I do a third playthrough just for that. But I think the rest of the story is already solved, or unfolded, not solved. So if we give the PKs the tower, they will chant recruitment chants to get into their lines, not give up hope, and fight for the next day. And on the other hand, the survivors um, also make motivational speeches and send tunes over the radio wave. It doesn't really impact all that much, but what it gives you is the tool to detect inhibitors. And that is the main reason why you will be interested in taking further radio towers. Not necessary to get any story unlocks, but suddenly you have this have inhibitors highlighted on your map, which is a really nice feature, especially since I know that there is a inhibitor 16 meters underneath that radio station in the VNC tower, and I have no idea how to get there. So the game is trolling me there, which I don't appreciate, but hey, can't have everything, eh? Um, yeah, on the other hand, that is a really nice feature. I remember how in the first playthrough I even said that this is really nice to give maybe older zones also a reason to be replayed, or just to see if you got everything. And indeed, in the outer Vilidor, in the first map, there's also a radio tower to scan a large portion of that map to reveal a lot of inhibitors you might have missed. Really nice. So, after we have installed the radio, the game makes one of the worst decisions ever, not letting you loot the place, but almost instantly booting up a cutscene where you and LeBron interact. LeBron has ruined shoes, and she wanted to get her new shoes, and that scene makes no sense, because the first time I was there, I thought maybe LeBron is warming up to me and just wants to go shopping with me to maybe create some sort of bond. But what it ended up is that we learned that she had a boyfriend before, and he got her a pair of sneakers, and she cannot go back to the old apartment because it's Harkon, and Harkon betrayed her heart. Yeah. Ever since the VNC Tower incident with the Night Runner, she separated ways with him, so she cannot go back into her apartments to unless she wants to relive her past with him. So instead of having that heartwarming moment where we go shopping together, we get a reality check, um, which is a nice bait. Um, but let's wind back a little bit before we start the mission of getting those shoes. We are stranded on the not on the VNC tower roof, but on a roof next building over. And since we know that games have a loop of rewarding us after a hard quest, which the VNC tower definitely was extremely hard, and we know that this empty roof cannot be the reward. The relationship with the one couldn't be the reward. Where are my epic items and stuff? So, I don't know how many. So, I don't know how many people would actually do this, but I straight up made a plan of reclimbing that VNC tower. And as it turned out, after resizing that tower, there was a bunch of loot up there. Like a ton of resources. Like before, you scraped by, had barely enough money for everything you needed, and suddenly you were rich. You were really freaking rich. So, which is in my eye an extremely saddening design choice. We don't get the choice to loot, and everyone who just followed the yellow marker would not feel rewarded at that point. Also, there's this cute little side character who only appears really quick, which which we which is definitely a crossover from Cyberpunk, because he gives us the scrap arms, which I still have to build and to see what they do. Um, yeah, um, but also we get that military drop and another night outpost. This is where my story will start wavering really far apart, since this is now the point where a lot of things can start happening at the same time. So, in my first playthrough, this is also the point where I started doing the career quests. And I really like the career side quests, since it's straight to the point. You got you, you just deliver packages and letters to certain people. Basically, a small, non-repeatable parkour challenge, but instead of just being another challenge, it's divided you with a bit of lore drop from history and how it's important to re-establish a post system. And also, it was the first time where I could actually learn or realize the glider correctly. Like before, the city didn't feel designed for the glider, either because I couldn't see um, the the checkpoints where you are supposed to go on a building, or here take that extra curve to go to that vent to regain height, or that sort of things. But this one would uh, would give me direct lines to actually learn how to use that glider. And then it became actually fun. Yeah, woohoo! And I enjoyed that glider quest from start to finish. Even so, it's if you would recommend it to someone else, it would sound so boring. Since all you do is really just listen to a little bit of lore and deliver letters. It would sound so boring. But yeah, next day, after the one I got her shoes, the fisher gets attacked again. Or not straightly attacked again, but the antennas for the PKs or the survivor suddenly gets attacked, and we need to do our best to salvage the situation. Hope that we can intervene before more antennas get attacked, and repair that attack. Then what do we do next? Also did? Yeah, I can only think of two major storylines, which is the end and meeting the Doctor now. Was there really nothing else? So, yeah, while we were fixing the antenna, Matt also told us that he got rumors about a certain GRE doctor or employee, and he promised us to help us with that if he fixes antennas, and he wanted more and more, but we kept Stern on track, and then uh, if we gave the antennas to survivors, Frank would take over, or Matt in the end would help us. Meeting the GRE doctor, which name I cannot remember, which is claustrophobic but helps us get into her old workplace. And she baits us a little bit, but in the end, it makes sense why she didn't want to tell us that she was actually the operator of that of that place, the main director. Like it totally makes sense. What if we killed her before getting even in there? Like she cannot know that we wouldn't do that. Um, but yeah, through a small mission, or at least if you don't loot, it's a small mission. Um, we get an expose about me, about I actually just forgot whose character we are playing. Aiden, right? Aiden. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You get a small expose about Aiden, uh, on how he was the strongest test subject, or one of the strongest. He was definitely special. That is what we know. That is why we can have endless inhibitors injectors, because we had a stronger tolerance towards them. Um, yeah, but we don't find any information about Mia or Waltz. So yeah, we didn't get any further than that. But then suddenly Waltz attacks us with his renegades. He followed us in, and wants not only our key but also the director, since she would be a valuable asset in his new team. Um, so we chase after him, and on the rooftop we get to catch up to the doctor, which managed to be really fast up there. Um, but then also Waltz appears up there, and we get a boss fight, one phase boss fight, where we lose control of our infection, and then end up slamming the head in of that GRE doctor. And that is, I believe, the point where Waltz also takes the key from us. I'm not that certain right now, but I think that was the point. Also, he wants us that that would be the last encounter. That the next encounter where I would get in his way, he would just straight up kill us. Yeah, we are allowed to live as long as we are not in his way. Um, which of course we Yeah, we lose consciousness because else we would just start fighting him again. So, with that, the epilogue starts. On my second playthrough, I made sure that I did not have any quests left over. On my PK playthrough, I didn't complete Matt's story line. So I'm kind of sad about that. This is something I will probably get to today as well. I don't know how I will name it, like maybe experimental cleaning up, something like that. Um, and just get a sneak peek on how that could maybe impact. Because once we enter the epilogue, we get confronted. We launch an attack or a mission to confront the colonel. On Peacekeeper's side, this was conflicting with Lewon. This was because the colonel was one of her targets, and once she knew he was vulnerable, or she was pressed. I forgot why she was pressed, but he had to get taken out. So she just straight up went for it. Was to the wall. On the survivor side, we actually decided to not save Hakon from the arrow from the first arrow we saw the one fire on him. That was when we discovered that he was the murderer of the previous commander. And we decided not to save him, resulting in him becoming a hindrance through through the inner circle. And we had a major confrontation later on with him where we had to kill him because it is basically what he wanted. He didn't want redemption. He only saw one way forward, and that is completing his task for Waltz, which was taking us out. And yeah, so we struck him down. On the PK side, that didn't happen. So that's why it's good that I remember that here, close to the timeline. So, on Survivor's side, we, since the one wasn't as rage filled, she didn't interfere, and we were completely solo on that mission, alone, and went for it. On PK's side, we had to catch up. We met her before the throne room and tried to convince her that it's better to go together. And I don't think we had much choice there to convince her not to go for it. But she also didn't want us at her side since she was on a suicide quest. And she knew the risk was too high to do as together, since this has only a more small chance of success. So she baited us into a room, locked the door, and continued with her work. We found a way out, got to the throne room, disarmed Lewon, and talked to the colonel. The colonel offered her a medical treatment, which we got Lewon to do, but it was very sus. But we listened to the colonel, and Lewon was so shocked that we would even listen to that creature, so that she just obeyed and went to the medical room. And the colonel, and this is where the dialogue is the same for both sides, because he warns us that it would not be the last missile strike. He knew more would be happening, but we would need to choose his side um, to gain more information. So I completely forgot the context as to why we need to lower the floodgates. It was something along the lines of the peacekeepers would have a better angle of attack of taking his fortress, but since normally his fortress has only the small bridge to get into, and lowering the floodgates from the dam would allow a land assault. Um, Something along those lines. But we would get the chance of leaving him in power in his fortress, and he would still give us all the information he would have about walls and where he would be heading. And this is where I decided on the survivor side not to listen to him. Even so, on my first playthrough, I was listening to him since Juan was getting executed, but his last words were that we should listen to the colonel. That there's more than meets the eye. We really needed to listen. And that's why I was deciding to do it on the first run. Because everything didn't make sense. So suddenly, even being like, oh, you're against the law and all of that, wouldn't make sense. So I listened. The one got to the medical, and I got the location of X13 from him, in hopes that I could stop further missile attacks. Also, he completely revealed when the next attack was and possible main targets, so I could warn people over the radio to not get obliterated by missile strikes. On the survivor side, I didn't do that. I opened the floodgate, allowed the ground attack, and opened a complete new sector on the map. I decided that I would not. No, at first I decided that I would explore that sector. But once I was encountered with the new enemy type, which is absolutely ridiculously, I decided to just rush it, to gunrun it. Because the main problem in that zone was I scanned it with my scope and did not find a secure location. A location where I could respawn. Looking at my map, I was convinced that the next respawn location would be multiple hundreds of meters out there, and I would always have to run a very long distance when I died. Not cool. So also the new enemy type was a runner that would explode on you if you wait for 5 seconds. Not fun, especially since explosion would trigger a new runner event, spawning more runners, and yeah, so we had to go fast. There were no time to collect any information about that zone, because I did not want to deal with the new runner type. And we needed to get to a bunker. And that bunker was, of course, the front entrance was closed, so we had to find the back entrance. We find the colonel in that bunker, and he has a gun to our head. We tell him that everything could still work out. He says, "Nah, how could anything work out when you just killed the last of my loyal men?" And he was kinda right about that. And I reminded him that he is really on his last legs, so he should just spill the beans. And he spilled the beans and then shot himself. So that way we still got our X13 post where we had to enter and stuff. So the timelines line here again. We make our way to the tunnel entrance, which is in in the dust of the second missile strike, where on the survivor side, I did not warn anyone. I had no idea the second strike was coming, so I didn't radio in anything, resulting in we got to the entrance of X13, reunited with Lawan, and on the survivor side, Lawan was injured. Also, she was informing me that Frank was dead, because no one was warning people about the second strike. That came as well out of nowhere, just as the first one. On the PK one, she wasn't injured. Some people were saved, but rather have some people saved than no one, right? So, yeah, casualties were inevitable on both, but on the second one, LeOne got injured, Frank straight up died, and we continue the same storyline on both sides. And that is, as I mentioned before, ridiculous. This is basically the end point. We have, up until this point, we had always a light shadow of the choices we did, in that some characters would be nicer or more sterner with us, depending on our choices before. But for example, on the survivor side, Jack Matt was still not hostile with us, because we allowed him to attack the colonel on the with his ground forces. We still were all pulling on the same rope, the rope of survival, even so every power source was in the hand of the survivors. No bad blood here. Same on the PK playthrough. Actually, on the PK playthrough, that was what was I forgetting. Good that I make a short recap. On our travel towards the X13, the ground transport, we sided with the colonel. As said, we listened to him. We would not lower the floods, the water, and Matt ambushed us. And that is where I still have to go back and see if I complete his storyline, if that would change. But Matt ambushes us, calls us a traitor, not ready for the cause, and wants to kill us. So we strike him down with his forces and continue on our merry way. I still don't get why Matt never tried to listen or asking us question at that point. Yeah, maybe he would have understand that eliminating the threat of further missiles is more important than dethroning the colonel. But our choice was to quote unquote betray Matt and go after the greater threat. But yeah. So we are in the end game. The last storyline, X13. We are going in. We have minor environmental puzzles, more like a corridor we are following, and time locks in arenas, or more that we have to eliminate all enemies before we can proceed. We also have more more infected time, where we become the super infected, and it all crescendos in a great confrontation with Waltz. And I really do not like that confrontation. Sure, it starts off strong with us getting the big reveal that Aiden, uh, even though he is not his actual son, is like a son to him, that Maya is Walter's daughter, and that explains why Aiden grew on him so much, not only because of his strong tolerance towards the experiments, but also that he was the friend of his daughter. Um, we suddenly have this father-daughter aspect, but we still do not get anything explained. Um, which I find really sad, because Worlds, instead of being an intriguing villain, goes to a mindless scientist who only has one objective, and that is curing his daughter, and ignores everything else. In a way, that makes sense, but uh, before he at least seems cunning and kinda charming. Here he suddenly throws everything out. He is like as if he had given up a long time ago, but in order to keep him somewhat sane, he has this one objective, maybe this one holy grail. And that just did not make sense. It didn't align with the rest of the story we saw, because nothing was explained. So becoming even more senseless makes no sense. Pun intended. And we get to this three phasing fight with Waltz, which is quite cute. I mean, a boss battle at the end of the game is always there to challenge every skill you have learned along the game. Yeah, the parkouring, the fighting, parrying, jumping, all that gets reasonably challenged. It still feels kinda lame, but I'm always in twist if I'm really a good gamer or just absolute garbage, because in certain situations I just know what to do, but then uh, there are situations where I should know what to do, but nothing, or the wanted outcome just doesn't happen. And uh, I mean, it doesn't sound too weird, but yeah, since, let's just say, I'm a elite gamer, yeah, and I just don't know it, yeah, or I don't realize how far I am in front of the average gamer. Then it would make sense that that fight is so easy. I mean, I on the second run I had only to met once, because I realized how strong the regeneration stim is. So I went for regeneration stim and toughness stim, and never used something else, and just brute forced the fight. I just went in. I think in phase 2 I blocked sometimes. Maybe even in phase 1 I blocked a little bit. But it's not that hard to beat for me. Phase 3 is more uh, the lamest phase of them all. But I think it's supposed to be the fun run, where you suddenly become this OP beast and completely bash his head in. But I find that boring. Where cunning suddenly gets thrown out of the window and you just uh, bash your head against the wall till it coughs in. Like, really boring. Um, yeah. So then we defeated Wards, and right. So on this point, I wanna highlight why I was scared of the hard mode, because I played normal the entire time because I was playing alone. I hoped that the resources would be really scarce, um, and there would only be a few of them, and we would uh, we would have to really scavenge for more. But it didn't become the case. At one point in my first playthrough, I had so many even golden, yeah, legendary weapons. It was ridiculous. The amount of resources, med packs, stim packs, I had way too many of them. I had so many, my inventory was full. How the fuck did that happen? But the reason why I didn't increase the difficulty is because I did not want to fight bullet sponges. Enemies that would only be strong because they had huge HP bars. That would have killed the entire drive to play this game. Because the difficulty should come from your weapons, especially the good weapons, being not as available as you want them to be. You want to be smart, you want to distract the opponent more than just straight up fight them. Direct fighting them is fine, of course, but even in the first game, you often would rather decide to throw some firecrackers, some decoys, and then let them run into a spike wall or a firewall or into a Molotov, instead of throwing down a Molotov and then slicing them up like I did many times. Um, so I didn't want to suddenly increase the difficulty, and the result of having a stronger difficulty would be sponges, like a 50% or 100% HP increase or damage increase from the opponent. Like that is not scary. That is not more difficulty. That would be tedious. So that is why I did not want to increase the difficulty. Um, Also, that is why I dodged increasing the difficulty on the second playthrough. Uh, because I knew what was in front of me. I wanted to scavenge as minimal as possible and just go for it. Just narrow down to the main quests and just hammer it through. And then we are here like 16 hours later. What a speed run. What a speed run. So, um, the end. Most disappointing thing of all. Even so, the music makes you believe it's a melancholic, heroic ending. Um, you get presented with the choice of letting Le blowing up the missiles or blowing them up yourself. If you let Le blow up the missiles, you get the option of saving Mia from the inferno. But I haven't seen the you sacrifice yourself for the greater good ending, but I don't think it will differ that much. Um, because once you save Mia, uh, you are doomed anyway, and she's as well. The story says Yamia only lived like a few hours longer, and then probably suffocated because he didn't had any breathing aid anymore. So yeah, and you banished yourself because the inhibitors were taking you over. The infection would still yeah, you knew at one point you would cause more harm to the city than saving it at one time. Uh, yeah, but it also tells you that you are still out there. So this leaves a few options. The one I want to discard is that by just going away, you were too scared of just ending your own life. But I want to discard it because it's a really hard decision. It's one you don't want to make. Yeah, you you know time will be up sooner for you than anybody else, and and you don't really know when. So you rather take your chances with the road, maybe explore a little bit, um, and then maybe one day turn into that infected mega beast that you are. Um, but you have to leave the city, the people you fought for behind. Which is actually the karma of a pilgrim, if you think about it. Like Spike said at the very start. Yeah. Once you become attached to someone or something, you have to leave it behind. That's why they parted ways. So it all comes full circle. Um, yeah, I'm a bit interested what Lewan's dialogue would be when she gets out. But what I missed on what I was missing on my second playthrough as on the survivor side is uh, the missiles. The second missile strike wasn't as impactful as I hoped it would be. Because the trailer was hopeful as a cinematic. Because the city was saved and all of that. But there was no melancholic tone or sadness tone in that at what cost in all of that. Because we didn't decide to converse with the butcher and couldn't warn people before. We do not see uh, the death of those people being relevant. What impact did Frank really have in this world? When all it takes is a missile strike to take him away and the world instantly forgets about him. Even so, he was spreading hope via the radio. And via the radio, the Night Runners uh, were able to come back and all of that. So yeah, kinda sad about that ending. It could have been way better. I think I said it after the second playthrough as well that the ending really felt cut short. Also, the biggest thing I hate about this game is how I cannot tap out. Because you wanna make an epic ending and then you have to delay it for minutes. because this is it for the second playthrough for my points after the playthrough. We have we had a good time. I like after the first one, I was like, yeah, I wasted my time. But after the second one, the routines of the games grew a bit more on me. So yeah, I was okay with how it's going. I, I'm still gonna do a thing where I explore the rest of Matt's storyline and where I wanna see what the Drowned City has in for me. But that's gonna have to be at some later point. I'm gonna have to. I really should play something else first because if you play one of the same thing too much, you just become attached to it anyways and give it a better rating than you probably should. But even so, I'm just saying it. The second playthrough made me aware of plus and minus points of the game, so my rating didn't change. As many good things as bad things alike. So, yeah, this is it. Dying Light 2. Still a game I wouldn't recommend. Even so, bro, the best things about this game, I think I should end with the best things since I always bash on this game. Yeah, the best things about this game is the freaking animation of the characters that talk to you. Bro, the facial animation and all that, the detail to the textures of the face features is amazing. The other textures, not so much. But the people that talk to you felt alive. Then, like I said in videos, this upscale mode, I'm so impressed by this. Especially how much it impacts the performance. Fantastic. And even so, the glider and the grappling, I didn't like at the start. I just had to learn them and had to get over my own afraidness of heights. So, yeah, that is it. Dying Light.